This company needs innovation, not nostalgia. The era of slow minds is over.
The projector flickered once, then froze right as my access ID disappeared from the corner of the screen. A faint electric hum filled the defense boardroom, the kind of silence that comes before a storm. I was still speaking when Noah Kent, once my intern. Now, the CEO's son rose from his chair and cut me off. "Let's be honest," he said, his voice sharp and youthful. "This company needs innovation, not nostalgia. The era of slow minds is over." The words hung in the sterile air like static. I didn't answer. The room stayed frozen under the harsh white lights, my unfinished presentation glowing behind me, 30 years of code, erased by one careless sentence. If you've ever had a moment like this when everything you built was dismissed in a breath, tell me, where are you listening from right now? Drop a comment below and share your story. And if you want to know what happened when they underestimated me, hit subscribe, because this isn't over yet. I stood there as the echo of his voice faded. I was Daniel Creed, 52 years old, Chief Systems Architect of Kent Defense Systems for nearly 3 decades. I had written the code that kept this nation's defense audits alive, tracking contracts, shielding networks, catching errors before they became crises. When the government called us the most reliable system in the sector, they were talking about my work. But in this room, legacy meant nothing. Noah smiled, confident and hollow, then gestured toward the woman beside him. "Our new Chief Technology Officer will take it from here." His girlfriend rose gracefully, shaking hands around the table. The CEO, Noah's father, looked down. Silent. My access profile blinked red on the screen. Access terminated. Gasps rippled through the room. I stayed quiet. Dignity was the only weapon I had left. Noah extended his hand. "Your credentials, please." I placed the badge in his palm, steady and deliberate. "Don't touch the audit framework," I said quietly. "It remembers more than you think." He chuckled and turned to the console. A soft beep echoed. Then the system froze. The screen dimmed, and a single line appeared in white text: "Authentication required Creed verification code." The laughter died. The silence returned. And the system, like me, refused to obey. The office felt colder after the meeting. The hum of the lights above was the only sound left, steady and faint. Papers lay scattered across the long table, a few marked with my handwriting, the kind no one dared touch. I gathered them slowly, folding each sheet with care. My badge still hung at my collar, even though the system had already forgotten me. The silence was sharp, like glass under pressure. I had worked in this room for most of my life. It used to vibrate with the low pulse of the defense grid, the same system I had built line by line, script by script. I remembered the first blackout, back in 2008 when the entire grid went dark. Everyone had gone home. I stayed 3 nights under this same desk, rewriting the diagnostic core by hand until dawn. That patch kept the company alive. They called it a miracle. I called it maintenance. Then there was the winter of 2011 when the mainframe overheated during an audit. Noah was an intern then, nervous, eager to prove himself. He'd miscalculated the cooling load, simple math, disastrous consequences. I found him alone in the server room, pale and shaking. "Please," he whispered, "don't tell my father. I didn't." I fixed it, reprogrammed the feedback loop, and stayed silent. The board gave him a commendation that year. I didn't correct the record. Now he was the one standing in my place. I lifted the old schematic from the table, the same one he'd once spilled coffee on. Back when he still called me sir, the paper had yellowed slightly at the edges, but the ink, my ink, hadn't faded. I slid it into the box and sealed it shut. The door opened behind me. Noah leaned against the frame, arms crossed, that same smirk he wore in the meeting still fixed on his face. Leaving so soon, he asked. I didn't turn around. "You once learned the first rule of systems." "Noah," I said quietly. "Never alter what you don't understand." He laughed, that shallow kind of laugh that people use when they're afraid. "We'll manage fine without you." "Daniel." "Of course," I said. "Just remember the system doesn't forget." He didn't answer. At the security gate, I handed over my box to the guard, nodded, and swiped my badge one last time. The screen hesitated a pause, no one else noticed, then flickered with a quiet message. System integrity locked by D. Creed. The guard glanced up. Our eyes met, and for a split second, he smiled. I stepped through the gate. The door closed behind me with a soft hiss. Inside, the lights dimmed once, then steadied again like a machine taking a slow, deliberate breath. The system was already remembering. The silence in my apartment didn't feel peaceful. It felt empty. The rent notice was still taped to the door, the ink bleeding from last night's rain. On the counter, a stack of unopened envelopes waited the bank, the insurance, the pension office. One of them bore the Kent Tech seal, Final Compensation under review. I'd stopped opening them after the third one read, delayed due to executive authorization. I filled the kettle halfway to save electricity. The click of the old stove echoed too loudly in the small kitchen. My retirement plan had been frozen when they terminated me pending investigation. The email said, 30 years of work. And suddenly, I was pending. I carried my mug to the desk, where the air still smelled faintly of solder and dust. The backup terminal sat waiting. A loyal ghost. I pressed the switch, and the blue light rose in silence. A new banner blinked onto the screen. Kent Tech announces workforce renewal. A new era of innovation. Corporate polish, hollow optimism. But the server ID caught my eye. It was routed through a relay I'd built myself. Years ago, one that should have been shut down. I checked the metadata. The press release had been written 2 weeks before my dismissal. My pulse slowed. It wasn't coincidence. It was preparation. Scrolling deeper, I found revision logs signed by Noah Kent and his new CTO. They had implemented a rapid verification system that bypassed the audit framework I'd built to protect the Department of Defense from fraudulent suppliers. In its place, a cheaper, faster process, one that looked efficient on paper, but left the network open to exploitation. My phone buzzed. Creed. "It's Alvarez," came the quiet voice of my former engineer. "They've disabled the safety checkpoints, said it was slowing down production. But it's more than that, the system can falsify data now." I looked at the bills spread across my table, the numbers blurred. For a moment, I thought about what 30 years had built, not just systems, but stability, family, security. All of it erased by a meeting. I opened my legal archive, the one Kent Tech had conveniently forgotten to confiscate. Inside, a file sat buried beneath thousands of audit records. Clause 21-9. The line was simple. All operational certifications remain valid only under the oversight of the original registered supervisor. My name followed. Printed clearly, D. Creed. They had fired me, but the government still recognized my signature without it. Every active defense contract under Kent Tech was invalid. A tired breath left my chest, not relief, not triumph, just quiet inevitability. "You wanted speed." "Noah," I said softly. "Let's see how fast you collapse." On the terminal, one final message pulsed in blue. Clause 21.9. Status valid. I closed the laptop, the lights dimming to a low hum. The world outside moved on, but the system-like memory still remembered me. The night was silent except for the low whir of old servers I'd reassembled from spare parts. Blue light bled across the walls as I reconnected fragments of what used to be my audit framework. The company thought they'd erased it when they revoked my credentials. They hadn't. I built that architecture myself, layer by layer, with redundancies hidden so deep no one but me could bring it back online by 2:40 a.m. The grid came alive, quiet, steady, loyal. Data packets blinked like distant stars. I watched checksum after checksum align perfectly. The code remembered its true author. For the first time in weeks, I felt something precise and grounding purpose. I reached out to 2 former engineers, men I'd mentored years ago before Noah's rise. I didn't tell them everything, only enough to synchronize our networks. Within an hour, their nodes linked with mine, and the system hummed like a heartbeat. Together, we restored the unaltered audit records, the real data Noah had buried. I encrypted the archive under a new title, Shadow Grid Rev 21-9. It wasn't revenge. It was correction. While verifying one of the defense contracts, I noticed an inconsistency. The digital signature bore my name, but the access key came from Noah's terminal. A forgery. Precise, but careless. The timestamp was 3 days after my termination. My pulse didn't change. I saved the proof, attached metadata logs, and sealed the file under military-grade encryption. Then I wrote one line in the header original verification required. At 6:00 a.m., I sent the packet through a secure relay directly to the Department of Defense. I didn't include a message. My audit system already spoke its own language logic. Timestamps. Truth. Later that day, Noah appeared on every major news channel. He stood on a stage surrounded by cameras, smiling like a man convinced the war was over. Behind him glowed the words, Creed Core 2.0, the future of defense. I recognized every line of the presentation he was quoting me, almost word for word. I watched from my small apartment, the morning light spilling across stacks of unpaid bills. My system was running. That was all that mattered. Then, during the Q&A, a uniformed general raised his hand. Has Mr. Creed validated this version for deployment? The question cut through the applause. For a moment, Noah froze. He recovered quickly, forcing a grin. Mr. Creed has retired, he said, his voice too light, too fast. The general didn't answer. He simply stared, wrote something in his notepad, and whispered to an aide. The silence stretched thin. Cameras kept flashing, but the energy shifted. Noah's grin faltered, the corners of his mouth trembling slightly. I turned off the television. I didn't need to see the rest. The first fracture had formed not in the system, but in his illusion of control, somewhere deep in the network. The truth was already aligning itself with the facts. It always did. The first wave of headlines hit just after 7:00 a.m. Clause 21.9 confirmed. Kent Tech faces federal inquiry. The image beneath it showed Noah outside the building, forcing a grin for reporters while his security team rushed him through the crowd. I could almost hear the panic behind that smile. The audit system had done its job quietly, precisely, without permission. Inside Kent Tech, unease spread faster than any virus. By 9:20, an emergency meeting filled the glass conference room. I wasn't there, but the network logs told me everything. Multiple devices signed in at once. Noah, the CTO, a team of analysts all pulling the same command chain to delete every trace of the shadow grid. The CTO leaned forward, sweat gathering at her temple. We can't remove the subnetwork, she said, voice rising. It's showing as locked code owner verification required. Noah barked back. Override it. She tried. A second later, the console beeped and froze. On her monitor, a red banner appeared. Unauthorized access verification, key missing. For a few moments, no one moved. The sound of cooling fans filled the room. Then Noah slammed his fist against the table. Pull the firewall logs, delete the backup. I don't care how, just kill the grid across the network. I watched their attempts cascade through the system. Each failed deletion triggered an automatic restore, one node activating another, like a chain of defiance built into the code itself. It wasn't revenge. It was maintenance. By 10:15, the CTO's voice broke through the comms. It's rebuilding itself. Noah leaned over her shoulder, eyes wild. What do you mean it's rebuilding itself? I mean it's not dying, she whispered. Desperation took over. Kill the main servers, he snapped. Pull the entire system offline if you have to. At 10:40. The lights dimmed across the Kent Tech complex. Screens flickered, machines stilled, and the hum of the air vents faded. For 10 full seconds. Silence swallowed the empire. Then, one by one, the monitors reignited, every screen showing the same white text against black, verified by D. Creed integrity, check in progress. Security footage later showed Noah standing motionless as the letters appeared. Reporters outside caught the flicker of light through the windows and began filming again. The videos went viral within minutes. The CTO turned to him, her face pale. "We shut it down," she said quietly. But something restarted it. He didn't answer. Back in my apartment, I watched the feeds reload, the heartbeat server doing exactly what I'd designed it to do, preserving truth, even from its own creators. On the central display, the Kent Tech logo blinked once, then faded into a single white line of text, "Integrity check complete." For a moment, the system exhaled, not in surrender, but in memory. The heartbeat logs blinked steadily across my screen, each pulse proof that the network was still alive, even after the blackout at Kent Tech. A few nodes remained active, scattered across distant servers that no one remembered existed. I leaned closer, tracing the rhythm like a doctor reading a pulse. The system wasn't gone. It was waiting. By 8:30 a.m., I authorized the command I'd written years ago but never intended to use. The audit chain, a hidden sequence designed to rebuild a destroyed verification network through any remaining nodes. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment. Then I pressed enter. The command executed instantly, spreading like a silent wave through encrypted tunnels that bypassed corporate firewalls. Status lights began to flicker, 1 in Frankfurt, 2 in Denver, 3 in Singapore. The chain reconnected itself like nerve endings seeking a brain. Each new link confirmed the truth of the data Kent Tech had tried to erase. Within hours, the first reports began to populate: missing invoices, duplicated payments, altered defense ledgers, the kind of discrepancies that no board wanted to see on record. News broke before noon. Audit chain leak exposes financial irregularities in Kent Tech's defense contracts. I watched from my apartment, heart steady, coffee untouched. The system had started its purge, not of vengeance, but of falsehoods. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to hope. Then, around 1 p.m., the signal changed. My monitor blinked with a new entry: unauthorized inbound command detected root-level access. Noah. He'd unleashed the full cyber defense division, rerouting every resource to hunt my code. Dozens of firewalls shifted simultaneously, slamming into the network like iron doors. Nodes began disappearing from the display one by one, each time with the same cold message: connection terminated, external override. I tried to reroute, but the speed of their purge was surgical. They weren't deleting at random, they were tracing me backwards, following the audit chain to its origin point, my origin. At 2:06 p.m., the last node in Singapore went dark. Then my main terminal flickered once, twice, and froze. A red warning filled the screen: access revoked, system ownership reclaimed by Kent Tech. The news channels were already spinning the story: Creed's access revoked again. The headline read, "Kent Tech restores full control." I didn't look away. I just sat there, breathing evenly. "They found the switch," I said quietly. The room dimmed as the monitors powered down. For a moment, everything went black. Then, at the bottom of the primary display, a single line appeared, faint, white, and alive: Creed Echo Protocol initialization complete. I leaned back in the chair. The servers beside me emitted a low hum. A red indicator light pulsed steadily in the dark: 1 heartbeat. Still alive. Still waiting. A week later. My name was everywhere again, only this time, framed in accusation: Kent Tech files, federal complaint against former chief architect for breach of national security. Noah stood at the podium during the press conference, flanked by lawyers and flags, his voice sharp and righteous. "Mr. Creed illegally accessed classified systems," he declared. "We will ensure accountability." Cameras flashed. He sounded calm, confident, exactly how I'd trained him to sound years ago. I watched from my apartment, the same light flickering across my empty coffee mug. For a moment, the silence pressed hard against my chest. It felt like defeat. By 9:30 a.m. the next morning, every one of my accounts was frozen. My legal counsel warned me that Kent Tech's evidence appeared solid. They claimed my audit chain had breached multiple defense networks. On paper, it looked convincing. I'd designed those logs to be perfect. Now they'd been rewritten against me. The summons arrived at 1 p.m. A hearing was scheduled within 48 hours. I printed the document, folded it once, and placed it beside the external drive marked Echo Protocol. The plan was already in motion when the day came. The courtroom was filled press, investors, government observers. I took my seat quietly at the defense table, across from me. Noah's lawyers stacked folders thick with exhibits. The judge entered. Proceedings began. Kent Tech's lead counsel stood first. Your Honor, we have irrefutable evidence showing unauthorized access from Mr. Creed's credentials. Screens behind her lit up, displaying terminal logs, timestamps, and connection IDs. Each entry looked authentic because they were mine. I waited until she finished. Then I rose. Your Honor, I said evenly. If I may submit a single exhibit, I placed the encrypted drive on the desk. This contains data from Echo Protocol, an autonomous verification system triggered only when Kent Tech's main grid is tampered with. The judge nodded. A technician connected the drive to the court's secure terminal. The file opened, unfolding thousands of lines of pure, unaltered system code. I pointed to the timestamps. Every entry marked Creed access occurred after the system was already breached from Noah Kent's user key. Gasps rippled across the room. The judge looked to the defense oversight officer in uniform, who was already examining the checksum report. He adjusted his glasses and read aloud, voice steady. All verified through department protocol. These logs are authentic. I turned to the board's representatives. Let the logs speak, I said quietly. The officer straightened, his tone turning official. Without Mr. Creed's validation, no Kent Tech contract is legally binding. The room froze. The reporters began typing furiously. On the screen behind the bench, a live broadcast banner flashed, red, breaking Kent Tech contract suspended verified by D. Creed. I didn't smile. I simply watched the glow from the monitors reflect across the polished surface of the desk. Justice, I realized. Didn't need noise, it just needed proof. And the system I built had already delivered it. By the time the summons reached me, Kent Tech was already in freefall. Stock halted, contracts frozen. The board demanded an emergency session at headquarters. Even the old CEO Noah's father was back in the building, flown in overnight to clean up his son's disaster, inside the boardroom. Tension was a physical thing. The press had gathered outside. Government observers stood by the glass doors. Noah sat at the head of the table, face pale, suit wrinkled. His father's voice broke the silence. Explain this mess. Noah swallowed hard. He hacked us, he muttered. Creed accessed restricted systems, and the main monitor flickered to life before he could finish. My face appeared on the screen. Noah, I said, calm and steady. You corrupted my code. Now it's auditing you. No one spoke. Behind me, lines of cascading data filled the feed, the audit chain in motion. Transaction logs, forged signatures, falsified invoices, all unfolding in perfect chronological order. Each entry bore the same verification tag validated by D. Creed. The board members turned to Noah. His father's knuckles whitened on the table edge, the CFO whispered. That's federal code verification. It's untamperable. Noah's breathing quickened. This isn't real, it's staged, he shouted. He's doing this remotely, manipulating. But the system interrupted him on every screen. A digital signature flashed, accompanied by the same voice print authorization confirmed. Audit in progress. The room went still. I could see the fear take shape on his face, the realization that his father, his board, the entire government network were now seeing what I had built to endure corruption. Noah Kent, I said, voice low but carrying through the speakers. The system you tried to own doesn't serve you. It serves truth. He stood abruptly, trembling. Please, he said, voice cracking. I didn't mean I shook my head. I didn't build it to destroy you. I said quietly. I built it to remember. Behind me. The audit chain reached its conclusion. The final slide displayed a single summary. All discrepancies logged. Escalation to Department of Defense active. In the boardroom. The CEO. The father lowered his head into his hands. Noah stared at the screen as if it were alive. The light from the display painted his face ghostly white. I took a pen from my desk and signed the transfer order on camera. Effective immediately, I said. Control of Kent Tech Systems is temporarily transferred to the Department of Defense pending investigation. The feed paused for a moment, then went dark. As the boardroom lights dimmed, a new line appeared on the central display, glowing against the black screen. Supervision temporarily transferred D. Creed. No one in that room spoke again. From miles away, I sat back in silence, the glow of the system still reflecting faintly across my desk, calm, final, and just. The aftermath came fast and cold. Within 48 hours, Kent Tech's name was plastered across every news outlet in the country. Defense giant under federal investigation, unauthorized modifications confirmed. I didn't need to watch the broadcasts. The headlines told the whole story. The board had tried to contain the fallout, but truth moves faster than damage control. By 9:00 a.m., Noah Kent was officially placed under investigation for falsifying federal data. The CTO, his partner in ambition, was escorted out of headquarters in handcuffs. The footage looped endlessly on national television, the once celebrated innovators of Kent Tech, now reduced to silence and flash photography. The company that had tried to erase me was being erased instead. For a brief moment, I felt nothing, no triumph, no satisfaction, just the steady rhythm of quiet clarity. Systems fall. I thought, but memory doesn't. Later that week, a message came from the board, an emergency request. Mr. Creed, Kent Tech's network is unstable. Government monitors have locked access. We need your supervision to restore control. I stared at the message for a long time before replying. I didn't ask for apologies or guarantees. I simply typed, "I'll come in at dawn." When I arrived, the building looked smaller than I remembered, sterile, drained of the arrogance that once filled its walls. Reporters were gathered behind security barriers, murmuring my name. I ignored them and stepped through the glass doors. Inside, the employees stood quietly as I passed. The same people who had watched me escorted out weeks ago now lowered their heads, not in shame, but in respect. No one spoke. Only the hum of servers remained, steady and constant. The boardroom was waiting. The CEO's chair sat empty. His father, the founder, rose when I entered. "We need your guidance," he said simply. "The department is willing to reinstate operations if you lead them." I nodded once. No speeches, no revenge, just work. I walked past him to the front of the room, scanned the system overview on the main display, and began restoring the network node by node. The process was slow, methodical, almost peaceful. As I typed, the reflection of my hands blurred in the glass wall. For the first time in years, I realized there was no anger left, just calm. Outside the boardroom, the corridors were quiet. On the far end, someone had replaced the nameplate on the executive office. The metal was new, the engraving fresh, the letters black against brushed steel. It read, "Daniel Creed, Acting CEO." I paused for a moment, staring at the reflection of the words, not as victory, not as power, but as balance restored. The heartbeat of the building steadied again. Systems aligned, alarms faded, and the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was earned. Morning light spilled through the tall windows, cutting across the surface of my desk and landing on the photograph that had followed me through every chapter of this fight. 10 faces looked back at me, my old engineering team, smiling, sleeves rolled up, standing in front of the first prototype of the audit network. Most of them had moved on, some retired. A few had called after the scandal broke, their voices filled with quiet pride. "You built something that told the truth." One of them had said, "Now, for the first time in years." The office was silent, not tense, not waiting, just still. The monitors glowed with the last operational panel of the Kent Tech network. Across the display, a simple prompt waited for my confirmation. "Command pending. Deactivate Creed verification." I rested my hands on the keyboard, letting the hum of the machines settle into the background. Every security cycle, every checksum, every emergency override, it had all led here. The system was stable, the investigation was complete, the truth had done its work. I typed the final command, "Execute." The screen dimmed. For a moment, The familiar pattern of audit pulses flickered once, then faded into quiet blue. No alarms, no warnings, just a calm, deliberate stop. The heartbeat that had once carried my code around the world came to rest. I leaned back, breathing in the soft hum of cooling fans. For the first time since the day they took my badge, I felt something rare and unfamiliar. Peace. Outside the glass wall, the city was waking. Delivery trucks moved along the narrow streets. The sky shifted from silver to pale gold. Somewhere below, someone turned on a coffee maker. The world, unbothered, was still turning. I glanced one last time at the old photograph. We'd built a system to protect integrity. And in the end, it had protected us too. I closed the laptop, slid the keycard into the drawer, and stood by the window as sunlight washed across the floor. For once, there was nothing left to fix, in the end. I realized the system never failed me. It just waited for truth to reboot. Sometimes, justice isn't loud. It's patient. It watches, it remembers, and when the time is right, it restores balance in its own quiet way. If you've ever had to rebuild after they erased your name, after they told you that your time was over, remember this legacy isn't in titles or offices. It's in the work that outlives the noise. Where are you watching from tonight? Tell me if you ever come back from the silence they left you in. Drop your story below. Because someone out there might need to hear how you stood back up. And if you believe truth always finds its way home, subscribe. Share this story. And stay with me. Because sometimes, that's how courage spreads one story at a time.